All right, let's dive into one of the most mysterious and, let's be honest, confusing books ever written, the Book of Revelation. For centuries, its wild imagery has totally captivated people. But what if the key to unlocking its meaning isn't hidden in some distant future, but in a massive, catastrophic event from the first century? Today, that's exactly what we're going to explore.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with this idea of a connection between Revelation and the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Then we'll dig into the three key sources that build this case, find some pretty shocking parallels between them, and see what kind of prophetic framework that creates. We'll also take a quick look at other viewpoints and then wrap it all up with why any of this ancient history actually still matters to us today.
Okay, so let's start with the big puzzle. The Book of Revelation is just filled with these epic cosmic battles, bizarre beasts, and huge moments of divine judgment. But is it all just symbolic of something way, way off in the future? Or could it be rooted in something its very first audience would have known all too well?
This is the question, right? This is the one we're really digging into. The whole idea is that the absolutely devastating Roman siege and total destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, that it provides a powerful real-world backdrop for John's apocalyptic vision. But to see how, we need to look at it through a very specific lens.
And that lens is called typology. Now, put simply, it's just the idea that history kind of rhymes. A type is a real historical event that acts like a pattern or like a preview of an even bigger event to come. So in this view, 70 AD isn't the final end-of-the-world fulfillment of prophecy, but it's a terrifying dress rehearsal.
To really build this case, we have to look at three totally distinct sources. But when you weave them together, they create this surprisingly coherent picture. We've got the prophecy that came before it all, the historical account of what actually happened, and the apocalyptic vision that came after.
First up, we have the prophetic blueprint. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus gives this really detailed, chilling warning about the coming destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And you got to remember, to his followers at the time, that would have seemed absolutely unthinkable.
Next, the history. And this is so crucial. Our main historical source here is Flavius Josephus. He was a non-Christian Jewish historian who was an eyewitness to the whole thing. His work, The Jewish War, gives us this brutal, secular, boots-on-the-ground account of what went down.
And finally, of course, we have the vision itself, the Book of Revelation, which was written after the destruction of Jerusalem, takes the themes and the trauma of that event and just cranks them up to 11, elevating them to this cosmic theological scale.
Okay, now this is where it gets really fascinating, because when you put these three sources side by side, you start to see some absolutely stunning parallels. I mean, the language and the imagery begin to overlap in ways that are, well, they're pretty hard to ignore.
Let's start with our first theme. All these reports of bizarre, terrifying signs in the heavens right before the city's fall. It's like the whole atmosphere was just crackling with this sense of impending doom.
Now, what's amazing about this slide is that this quote, it's not from the Bible. This is Josephus, the historian, describing what people said they saw. A sword-shaped star, a comet that lasted a whole year, phantom armies fighting in the clouds. You can just feel the apocalyptic dread pouring out of his writing.
And this just connects the dots perfectly. On the left, you've got Jesus' prophecy about cosmic signs. On the right, you have John's vision and revelation using almost identical language, and Josephus' historical account of what people saw fits right in the middle, grounding all that prophetic language in a real-world experience.
But you know, the parallels aren't just in the sky. They are also deeply, deeply human. And that brings us to theme 2, which focuses on the pure terror of the people who were trapped inside the city as the Roman army was closing in. I mean, listen to this. Josephus paints this absolutely harrowing picture. People weren't just fighting, they were desperately trying to disappear, hiding in underground vaults, in sewers and aqueducts, anything to escape the slaughter. The whole city literally became a tomb.
So here's the kicker. Look at this language of pure desperation. On the left, Jesus predicts a time of such terror that people would wish for the mountains to just fall on them. On the right, Revelation depicts that exact scene on a cosmic scale. And Josephus tells us this wasn't just symbolic language, people were literally trying to hide inside the earth.
So when you start assembling all these pieces, the prophecy, the history, and the vision, a specific theological framework starts to emerge. It's a view known as partial preterism, and it really helps make sense of how all these sources connect.
Partial Preterism basically argues that 70 AD was a real historical fulfillment of prophecy, but not the final one. It was a type, that preview of God's ultimate judgment. It's kind of like watching the trailer for a movie. You see the main themes, you get the scale of the action, but you know the full feature film is still to come.
So here's how it all fits together, nice and simple. Step 1 is the blueprint. Jesus predicts the fall of Jerusalem. Step 2 is the historical preview. The events of 70 AD happen, just like he said. And Step 3 is the apocalyptic picture. John, writing after it all went down, uses that event as the raw material for his cosmic vision of the end.
Now, it's really important to understand that this is one major interpretation, but it is not the only one. So, to give you a more balanced view, let's just briefly look at the main schools of thought on Revelation's timeline.
So, as we've talked about, partial preterism sees 70 AD as a preview. A related view, called full preterism, goes a step further and argues that pretty much everything in Revelation was fulfilled by 70 AD. Then, in complete contrast, you have Futurism, which is a really popular view today, and it argues that almost none of this has happened yet. It's all set for our future.
So, why does any of this matter today? I mean, seriously, why should we care? Well, whether you subscribe to this view or not, understanding this 70 AD connection gives us some really powerful insights into Revelation's deeper message about justice, suffering, and ultimately, hope. So what are the big takeaways here? First, it grounds the apocalypse in real, actual human suffering. It reminds us these aren't just abstract symbols. Second, it shows this powerful pattern, judgment on corrupt systems, but also vindication and hope for the faithful. For early Christians facing persecution, that was huge. And finally, it takes a local judgment on one city and makes it universal, a timeless warning for all nations throughout all of history. And that really leaves us with this final thought. This theory suggests that John used a catastrophe from the past to help people imagine the future. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? In our own time, with our own crises, how do the echoes of the past, both the good and the bad, continue to shape how we imagine what's still to come?